Here we go. So welcome everybody. This is the Kinder Leeds Festival and the first session on the Kinder Business Day. So I'm Jeremy Cox, part of the organising group for the festival, and it's a delight to welcome the co-op in corporately and individually. Got some really interesting representatives of the organisation here. We're going to hear the national view, the local view, and also the customer view, critically important, on Kinder business from the co-op's perspective, but what does social value and doing business well mean for the co-op? So we have with us Ed Powell, who is the National Partnerships Manager. So he'll show us how this fits in from a national level with the co-op. Susan Docherty is joining us, and she's a member pioneer here in Leeds, and that's a wonderfully enigmatic and engaging title. So we'll find out what member pioneers are. It's a really important part of what the co-op do. You'll see a video from Julia, who's also on the call. She's a member pioneer in Kipax. For those of you that don't know Leeds, Kipax is an ex-pit village, I think, isn't it, Julia? Is that right? So obviously been through lots of changes in the past few decades, and a close-knit and relatively small community, but a community it sure is. And we also have Kate Peace, who'll be joining us, who'll show us what the co-op looks like from a customer's perspective. And it's a really important idea, not just to hear the corporate view, but when we look at business and organisations, if you don't genuinely hear from the people who that organisation serves, you're really not getting a full view. So it's important to hear a little bit from Kate when she joins us. So I'll hand over to Susan. So Susan's going to introduce the session a little bit for us, and then we'll kick off with a video from Julia.
Great. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining in. My name's Susan. I work as a member pioneer in the Leeds Chapel House and Leeds LS7 area. And I got involved with Kinder Leeds through my role as member pioneer. And a member pioneer, I don't know how people find the job title. I think because I've been in the co-op quite a long time. My first job was a Saturday girl back in the 80s. Terrible uniform back in the 80s at the co-op. If we've learned nothing, it's the uniform's moved on to a kinder uniform. Anyway, so I knew a lot about the co-op values and ethics quite early on when I was like 15, and then this job came up as a member pioneer, and it's a fairly new scheme, probably only running for like a couple of years, but the idea is to be quite active and in your local community. So it's quite unusual because I know a lot of supermarkets have community champions, and they tend to work within the store, but the member pioneer role is actually out in the community. So I'm not necessarily in the store an awful lot. I'm out with volunteers, with organisations, making that link between the co-op organisation and supporting local volunteers in the community, really. So that's how I got involved as a member pioneer. And then the Kinder Leeds was through Kate, who will hopefully join us later on. She approached the co-op because she wanted to work with the co-op in terms of promoting the Kinder Leeds festival that was going to happen originally, in face-to-face, in person. And we were quite keen as an organisation to get involved in that. We were going to be linking up with schools to do some artwork, and then obviously COVID happened. That didn't come apart. But the idea of Kinder Leeds and just Kinder in business struck a chord with obviously wanting to work for the co-op and knowing what the co-op's values were, and I felt it fitted quite well, which is how we've ended up to where we are today, really. So so to better explain the member pioneer role and how the co-op works in communities, I approached some of the member pioneers to see if they would be happy to be filmed, and in the midst of COVID, Julia stepped up and actually managed to do her own video, which was great, probably better than I could probably pull off, to be honest. So Julia's just done a quick video for us, a couple of minutes, just to explain a bit more about the role and how that works and fits in with the co-op's ethics and the whole Kinder kind of business theme.
Kippax Co-op is situated at the heart of the community which it serves.
My name is Julia Almond and I'm the member pioneer for Kippax, one of a team of hundreds across the country whose role it is to support and empower different community groups in our different local areas. Over the last few years, the local community fund has raised nearly £50,000 for different groups in Kippax, whether it be uniformed organisations or Brigshaw School, Duke of Edinburgh. Last year they actually purchased some outdoor equipment, new lightweight equipment for the young people to carry on their backs when they do outdoor expeditions. And their old tents, well, they passed those on to a group, a charity in Selby. So an act of kindness which just passed the goodwill and spread it further still.
We have national priorities to work to, and in addition to the well-known co-op priorities around fair trade, for example, we also have priorities around looking after spaces in the community which otherwise might be in jeopardy. Let me show you one. This area is 100 yards away from the co-op, round the back of High Street, derelict and unused at the moment, but Kippax in Bloom, one of our local causes this year, will spend their money on starting to refurbish this and turn it into a park, a sensory garden for people living with dementia. One of the actual projects this year that I've been involved with as member pioneer is establishing a working group looking at Kippax becoming a dementia-friendly community.
This forms part of the Co-op's national priorities of supporting mental health, and we were lucky that we had 15 or 16 people turn up who were very committed to taking this initiative forward. But at the same time, I'd been working with Kippax North Primary School as we raised £5,500 for them last year in order they could make a science trail outside of their school. And they were interested and invited me into the school. So I led a Dementia Friends session with every class in the school and made a new 200 Dementia Friends, all aged under 11. Part of the group as well decided they would do the same thing in another neighbouring school, but sadly, because of COVID, we've had to put that on ice. But Monica, the manager at the Garforth Neighbourhood Elders team, phoned me and asked if I could help because of my contacts in the community through this role. Already Garforth Net had many telephone befrienders, but with lockdown there was a much greater need to contact more people. So through my contacts I identified another 17 people, and we were able to contact and have been in contact over the last few months with an additional 50 vulnerable and elderly people who were grateful for that extra bit of kindness and support. The weekly call to check they were okay, and they came back to me as the coordinator for that little group, that little subset of the larger group, to pass things on back to Garforth Net if required. So in many ways this role has been a very fulfilling one, to be able to work with different groups in the community, and many groups in the past have used the co-op itself for the notice board, for promoting their causes, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to continue doing so. But I think I would just like to reference the amount of investment the co-op has put into this initiative, because it has been a huge investment on their behalf, and it really demonstrates how business can work to actually promote cohesiveness in the community in order to make a kinder world.
So, Susan.
Yeah, so the role, so Julia's obviously explained kind of some of the stuff that she's done. I mean, the good thing about the member pioneer role is that every kind of member pioneer brings something to the role, and it might be some sort of expertise or experience they've had. So the co-op has kind of 3 main themes that it's kind of working on within this year, and obviously green spaces is one that is quite heavily highlighted. Education and skills is another one, as is health and well-being, which is really important at this time. So every pioneer gets involved with volunteers and organisations, and I think the co-op doesn't necessarily, I think it was Kate that said this to me, they don't necessarily kind of sing about the kind of good work that they do. So even though we're working in communities, we're not necessarily going with a kind of co-op banner, although we do have a co-op banner as well, but we're not necessarily going along with that kind of agenda, as in we're obviously trying to sell something. It is kind of linking the co-op with local communities, because co-ops tend to be in the heart of communities. They're seen as like a local convenience store, and that's really important, that we're kind of seen as to be kind of working with communities. So they're often kind of more led. So we tend to I mean, if you're used to kind of doing community work, it's important that kind of the communities and the residents, the local people, take ownership of kind of what they want to do, and that's really important in the work that we do. We're kind of feeding off kind of what they want to do, and kind of trying to make it happen. We're not the ones kind of saying, this green space needs looking at. I think we need to do this. So it's really important that it is kind of community led, and the co-op role is about kind of just shaping and helping that community do, kind of reach their potential. That sounds very very dramatic, aspiring to so the other kind of things that we get involved in, I don't know if you've seen like the little free libraries that kind of dotted around all over the place. That was a great initiative set up by a woman, and so a lot of the member pioneers are trying to work with that, trying to get those in communities. We do support for events. I mean, we obviously donate things like refreshments, food, drinks, that kind of thing, and raffle prizes, that kind of thing. But also we have our own kind of staff going and volunteering for bigger events as well. So I mean, basically we put a hand to anything that the community kind of recognises it as important for the community. And obviously during the lockdown period, we were making phone calls, befriending people, doing doorstep video visits where we could, shopping for people that were isolated, working with the Trussell Trust, the food banks, making sure deliveries were given, food was donated and given to those in need. I worked at a high school making PPE masks during the lockdown. So like a whole host of roles really. It's a really enriching job in a way, and it does kind of fit in so well with that kind of kindness ethic that I think is so important.
Okay, can I jump in with a quick question? I'd just be really interested in how the member pioneers across Leeds connect, and maybe the differences you see, perhaps between what happens in Chapel Allerton and what happens in Kippax, where might the similarities and differences be?
I guess, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think because the areas are very different. So obviously you've got very different member pioneers, but you've got kind of very, very different areas. I mean, Chapel Allerton tends to be quite a professional area. So a lot of kind of young families live there, whereas obviously you've got areas quite close by. So you've got LS8, which is a massive member pioneer area, which kind of covers quite fairly affluent areas, but obviously very, very deprived areas as well. So I know the LS8 area, the member pioneers were doing a lot of kind of food bank drives, hooking up with kind of the youth services and working with an organisation called Catch. So doing a lot more of the kind of like frontline kind of food delivery service. Julia, what would you add?
The networking is building all the time. From a starting point where we only had 2 or 3 member pioneers, sort of in disparate parts of the city, we're building a much better network now and starting to have meetings together in a more coherent way, I think, with our line manager. So the value is that we're sharing good practice, and we have a WhatsApp group as well. So when we're doing things, we're sharing ideas there, because I think we're all great believers that we, rather than work in isolation, we're learning from what each other is doing.
and albeit, you know, the way the role develops will be very different according to the community. And, you know, so I'm got one large co-op to work with, where another member pioneer might have a small food store and a funeral store to work with. And, you know, that would bring a sort of different flavour to the role as well. But yes, we're learning from each other and building a stronger network together, as the co-op has invested more strongly in the programme and has acquired more member pioneers across communities.
That's interesting. Probably worth a quick sidebar here for anyone that's watching this overseas or doesn't know the co-op that well. You know, you mentioned the funeral services there. I'm sure Ed could fill us in a little bit more here as well. You know, the co-op's involved in many businesses, so you know, don't be surprised if you hear that they're involved in something as diverse as running food stores or funeral services. It's a fascinating and wonderful organisation. Quick question for Wes. Wes, we've got plenty of time at the end for Q&A, but this is one for now, I think, for sure. Wes was asking, it's a good one for Susan and Julia, is the member pioneer a paid role? Is it connected to any sort of specific educational programs or professional development or qualifications?
It is a, sorry Julia, it is a paid role. It's quite a small role, it's only 4 hours a week. So again, because the member pioneer is kind of so varied, people can either be working like elsewhere, because it's like a 4 or 5 hour week job really. So it is a paid role. I mean, in terms of professional development, I guess, I mean, obviously we would have had an induction when we started, but we're still fairly new to the role. Julia, do you want to step in?
We did have a couple of national conferences which I attended, which were great. They were held in Manchester, and as many member pioneers that could get attended. And during those sessions, you know, we heard about the direction strategically for the co-op and how this initiative fitted into everything else the co-op does. But also we learned, you know, good practice as to what was happening in different areas too. And I think the intention this year was to have more regional conferences, because we've had a greater number of member pioneers. But of course, that's been set back because of COVID. But I think the intention is that we can still perhaps do some things on Zoom. And we've had a couple of meetings on Zoom. We've had one regional meeting on Zoom already. So yes, there is some professional development, yeah.
Super. It's probably a good time to bring Ed in, who's the partnerships manager for the co-op and the national role, and might well give a perspective on, you know, how he sees the member pioneer role growing and developing over time, and also how it fits into the wider co-op strategy. So Ed, you're very welcome.
Thank you. And I should say before I get going that I'm based in LS8, so I'm on the Gledhow Valley, and I've been in Leeds since 1999. So lived in Hyde Park as a student, and Pudsey and Armley and around, and I love, my favourite area to ever work in was Hare Hills. You know, so I had an office in Shine and then up the other end as well. So yeah, I'm a local. So you'll probably see me running around the area at some point. Is the main way people catch me. So yeah, my job as partnership manager, it's really exciting to hear from the member pioneers, and actually it just makes me smile. I was there sort of at the beginning with the co-ops owned by its members. You know, that's one of the primary differences, and our members asked that we keep connected to the community. And the challenge is, as a member-owned organisation, if we do that from a straightforward employee food perspective, you might get a bias. And the creation of member pioneers was really really stemmed from some of our thoughts around asset-based community development. I don't know if you know much about it, in community organizer roles. And actually, what is the advantage of being member-owned? The advantage is that members should have a say in how we run, but also have the opportunity to participate. So actually, that's where the role of member pioneers came in. And as Susan well pointed out, as a co-op on a national scale, we've got about 2,600 food stores, about 500 odd funeral homes. We also run an online pharmacy repeat prescription service, and a number of other things. So Jeremy mentioned that you could see us in many spaces. So I'm the chair of a co-op academy, Brownhill, just off York Road, as well. So involved in education as well as a sponsor. And the reason we do this, I'll take you kind of right back to our roots to 1844 in Rochdale, is that co-ops were formed from the point of the Rochdale Equitable Society of Pioneers, hence the name. And there was actually real problems with food poverty and food injustice. So effectively, people were being overcharged for food. Things like flour were being cut with chalk. And actually, members of that community got together, the original Rochdale Pioneers, and said, hang on a minute, we can actually own and run it for the benefit of our members and for the benefit of our community. So they pulled their money, they put in £1 each, that's about 4 months' wages at that particular time, and they pulled it, and they said that not only did they want to create a business that operated for profit, but the profits were then returned to that community, either for the benefit of the members or for the benefit to the community surrounding them. So, you know, the unique thing there was that actually the benefit they originally built was a library and education centre above that original shop in Rochdale, which is now our museum, and I'm the secretary of that museum. So you're very welcome to come along, or we can get you into Zoom on that front. And that, in essence, meant that the way we were formed was really important, and our identity was important, and a set of values and principles was formed from that. And the ones that I operate most closely to in my role are principles 5, 6, and 7, which are around education, awareness, and information, helping all people to grow, helping our members to grow, helping our communities to grow, which links back to what Susan has said about our role in supporting people, no matter what background, rich or poor. Cooperation amongst cooperatives, supporting other co-ops to grow if we think it's a great model, and it's a model that intrinsically through its identity is kinder to communities. Why not help other co-ops to grow? We've got some great examples in Leeds. Leeds Bread Co-op's a really brilliant one. I can pick that up just down my road. I really love them. There's a great printing co-op as well. There's some really cracking examples here. So actually helping them is really important to us. And then the final one is concern for community, which is where member pioneers come in. And actually the importance of member pioneers, as I said, one is that they're out of our shops, they're in community, they're creating those links. Because if we built something from colleagues in a store, intrinsically what happened in the pilots, because I piloted different models, was that people did activity in and around our stores. And actually what we want to do is support community. So the release that Julia and Susan have shared in terms of choosing or identifying ways in which their community want to be supported, not the way in which the co-op says a community should be supported, is a really important part of that design. So I can talk loads, so tell me to shut up or please interrupt me. So part of our community strategy and design over the last few years has been to make sure those member pioneers are in every community. We're trying to build that up. Does every store have a member pioneer? Every store has a member pioneer linked to them. There are 1,000 or going to be 1,000 member pioneers by the end of this month, which will be full capacity, which means by the end of this month, every store funeral branch will have a member pioneer connected to them. Part of the reason for that is if you're buying with the co-op, we want to make sure that the profit we're generating is helping to return to that community. So there are some national programs and things of return, but there are also examples around our membership strategy, which is being refreshed, but at the minute we call 5+1. So there is an immediate reason for you to become a member, that you will get 5% of your spend, your own brand spend, returned to you, but then 1% returned to your community. And in each and every community, there are 3 local causes that members have the opportunity to be able to give to choose which one they give to, or sometimes just knowing that their spend will help, and they will, they won't have to make a choice, and they can give to all 3. But within being a co-op, actually that member participation is important. So member pioneers helping to drive that, giving our members options to support their community through their trade, but then also developing that as well. So actually where I see the member pioneers going is not only as this sort of community role, but actually if we're to be a great co-op and to be kinder, we need to listen to our members and our communities about how we operate. We've got now 1,000 more pairs of ears to be able to do that. And that helps us to do things better. I never want to say the best, because I want us to continue to strive to be better. And the only way we can do that is listen to our members and build it for our members, because ultimately our members are close to the communities. And so that's why the uniqueness of member pioneers, and we've seen through this COVID time that the work in sort of linking those local COVID groups to make sure that food supply is in community, to make sure that, to help enable community groups to work together. That's the role we want to play. But we can do that on a national level as well, helping to sort of build some of those models to support member pioneers. So we talk about redistribution. Actually in Leeds, we piloted redistribution models. We worked with what are they called, the Real Junk Food Project, and Adam and all of those guys to be able to pilot it, and then saw how food flowed from our stores into communities. So, and we're talking about groups like the one, like the pantry at All Hallows, or Love, what are they called, Love Toast in Harehill. Sorry, I've forgotten their name. And just seeing Natalie from our Roundhay store actually really engage and support that and go, okay, that's the first step. How do we then get our colleagues and members working? So creating those opportunities to build, that's really what we want to do, and continue pressing that. What I will say is, as a co-op, that's not good enough. That's the start point. Okay, as a co-op, we need to be cooperatively different. And let's be very candid, food redistribution is potentially a very good thing, but it also helps us to cut down waste. It helps us with redistribution, but there's also a commercial reason for doing it. But as a co-op, how do we help communities to own that food supply chain and own solutions? And there are co-op models within that. So pantry models where there's a small fee or ownership where people can then choose and design their own supply system. Models which are talking about growing your own food. And actually these are the things that co-ops and bringing members together can really help to drive. So I think that there are next steps that we really need to get into on that front. If anyone's got questions around sustainability, I can talk about those, but I'll leave that for the time being. I can talk about COVID response and how that's gone. But from it, what I will say, TLC was a brilliant model. What I will say about our community strategy and learning through COVID is actually we're coming into a time period where we've seen the growth of ourselves as a co-op, but also other forms of business. Ultimately, that we're not a PLC. A PLC's legal responsibility is to make the most money for their shareholders. We don't have that. And that's crucial. Yes, we need to make money, but we need to make money to return it to our communities. I've been looking at the figures of the growth of KICs, and last year there were 15,000 community interest companies. In July alone this year, there were 660 community interest companies registered. So my challenge as a cooperative partnership manager is, how do I help that inclusive economy to grow, because they are closer to their communities and helping to return to make a kind one. So that's the challenge I put on myself now.
Ed, that's brilliant. That's a good place for me to jump in and move us on. But can I just highlight a couple of things that I think will emerge today during the various sessions that we're running that you've highlighted. One is the difference between participation and consultation. So a lot of organisations with staff and their customers get into what they think is engagement and involvement of their staff and customers, but actually it's just forms of consultation. What you've described is active participation and co-production, which is materially different and actually is a fundamentally important lever for a different type of organisation. And you know, I think people can see from what you've described there how that manifests itself in reality, and as well with Susan and Julia, you know, describing what they were able to do in an environment where you don't necessarily need, you know, huge amounts of money and time, but what you need is invested people well supported by an organisation with those deliberate structures. I think you know, you've highlighted that really well. And I think the other thing that's just important to flag up is what I heard you describing was Co-op centrally taking a stance of enabling and nurturing that network to grow rather than trying to control it centrally. And again, I think that's a very different mode, but actually is much more sustainable and effective in terms of generating creativity, cooperation, and ultimately better results. So it's really inspiring to hear, you know, a large national diverse organisation that actually runs ethically, effectively. You know, it's a really good model that people, I hope, will be inspired by. So that's super. Thank you very much. So, in the spirit of let's hear it from the people ultimately who put their hands in their pockets. I'm going to jump over to Kate, who I'm trying to unmute. Kate, can you unmute yourself? We've got you on mute, and I'm gonna do this interview style. So. Kate, I've got a couple of questions from you. Just introduce you. In fact, probably get you to introduce yourself, so that people know who you are. Kate is a resident in Leeds and is involved in a local co-op as a member of the community and a customer. But Kate, what else do you do with your time?
Well, I'm an artist and an Ayurvedic health consultant, which includes being a yoga teacher and a Tai Chi teacher as well. So I'm very interested in nutrition and health. And that's one reason why I like to use my local co-op. But a much bigger reason is that, you know, as people of my generation, most people of my generation were brought up in a very adversarial, competitive culture. We were educated that way, that it's best to win. The best thing to do is, if you can't win, at least try to win. And of course, then somebody has to lose. So in my 40s, in about 1980, I discovered from a personal development course a new philosophy that was about winning, both people winning, win-win philosophy, a you and me philosophy, in which the whole world could work for everyone. And that was, to me, that was mind-blowing, inspiring. Nobody has to lose. We can all win. You know, we can all get our share. And I've tried to live like that ever since. And so obviously I collect lots of philosophies that agree with that, you know, like Buddhism and yogic philosophy, Ayurvedic philosophy, all that is about kindness to everything, the environment, to other people, to yourself, all the things that the kind of Leeds project is about. And so I love my local co-op, you know, I really love it because it follows the kind of values I've been trying to live by.
Brilliant. Juliet, that's fascinating, and that parallels my story, I got into the business of helping organisations improve what they do through that route of really exploring the idea that if we win together, actually we'll do better. And that we'll do better as individuals, as organisations. The relationships between organisations and the people they serve will also look after the environment and our communities better. And I think that the hard edge of that is I've discovered that actually makes profit and not-for-profit organisations run better as well. So the evidence is there. It's catching on. It's growing. And it's a shame that we have to discover it a little bit later in life, isn't it? If only they taught it to us in schools. But so just tell us a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, about what makes the Co-op in particular as an organisation nationally or locally appeal to you.
Well, one thing is that I feel I can trust things I buy there, things with a Co-op label. I know that the producers are looked after, the product is looked after all the way right to the consumer. Everybody looked after. Fair trade, I think the Co-op was the first company to do fair trade, to stock fair trade food, and you can buy organic food. But I know that the fish, for instance, is sustainable. It's not. Right. It's not full of pollutants. It's sustainably fished. It's something I can trust. I know I can, when I buy it, I know I'm buying something good to eat. There's organic food. Everything's labelled really well. You can always discover what's in the food. You know what you're buying. The prices are good. They're comparable with most other stores. It's hardly ever really crowded, yes. Which is brilliant. I can walk to it, which I love. It's got a fantastic sustainable policy in that all the power it uses is mainly renewable. I think it's 98% renewable. Yep. I discovered loads of interesting things about the Co-op when I became a kindness ambassador for my local area, and I went to talk to the manager of my local Co-op. So I looked up the kind of things the Co-op was doing, and I've been astounded to find more out today, but the things I found out were incredible. 95% of waste is recycled. All food is given to food share. Any food that's past its sell-by is given to food share, not put into landfill. All that thing to me is fantastic. So the Co-op's looking after me as a customer, the producer, and the environment and the community, which is really marvellous. What other major stores, supermarkets do that? And yet the Co-op doesn't make a big deal about it. Other supermarkets are talking about how they have this, tremendous policy for not using plastic bags and so on. But the Co-op's been doing that since 2018, not using single-use plastic, and it has compostable bags. I love that. I love to be able to shop there and know that I'm treading a little bit more lightly on the earth.
That's fascinating that, again, I'm privileged in doing consultancy work. I get to work with lots and lots of organisations, and you see, as you say, people trumpeting their glorious corporate policies and values, and the reality is they don't live them. But what you've described is an organisation that's got, a win-win-win-win supply chain,
yeah.
and values sort of thoroughly woven into everything it does. But dead articulated, still not good enough.
But I can trust that the food is not going to be reduced food standards like this. We're talking about this American chlorinated chicken, aren't we? That might come to us. Well, I know the Co-op's not going to stock that. I know that I won't be lured into buying stuff that's not healthy to eat. Yeah, which is brilliant.
Have a safe haven.
Yeah.
So in terms of it being a kinder business, you're seeing it from the local community's perspective as a customer. Why do you think the Co-op is a kinder business?
Well, no other store gives me back 5% in, all the money that I spend on them. I mean, this year, for example, my budget doesn't include much celebratory food like, wines and so on. But my daughter had spent 10 years doing up a barn, and it was a big project when she moved in. It was a big celebration. So I was able to buy some Co-op, organic, sparkling wine with my bonuses, you know, with all my points, without you know, using my normal budget on it, which was absolutely marvellous. It felt like a true celebration, and the Co-op was, you know, helping me to make that celebration.
Yeah.
And also, even, you know, the 1% in 1% doesn't sound like a tremendous amount of money, but it builds up, and the local community gets that, and I can choose, you know, which project in the community I'd like to get that money. Yeah, and every week I get an email from the Co-op saying which offer would I like, usually from things that, you know, I like to buy. So I might get 25 pence off each lot of vegetables I buy, or each lot of fruit, or 50 pence off something else. But, you know, then I can stock up on that thing, especially if it's dried goods, whilst I'm getting that offer, which is really, really brilliant.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I was Ed was describing that system where, you know, you get money back and you put money into local charities. I'm a customer and member as well. So I nominated a charity called Tutti Frutti, which is a children's theatre company in Leeds, which just so happens I'm really good friends with the artistic director there, Wendy, and they're based in Shine, which Ed mentioned earlier on, the great community asset in Hare Hills. And you know, you genuinely get a sense of kind of collective well-being and action and ownership through that process. It's really fascinating to get a sort of psychological kick from that money really can't buy. It's a really interesting process. A really good demonstration of how, because it's, you know, local by default, you're genuinely invested in your local way. You know, I'm even though I'd always look out for Tutti Frutti,
yes,
I'm sort of invested in them as well now, which is lovely. So I think
and other good thing is that you can rely on the fact that you will know all the staff. They've all been there for years and years and years, ever since I've been using the local Co-op. So they're obviously being looked after, aren't they? Otherwise they wouldn't still be there. You know, you go into other shops and the staff's turning over all the time. You know, it's new people who you've never met before. So to be able to know people and say hello to them and know they've been there for decades is really great.
Well, listen, I'm going to jump in now because I want to save 5 minutes at the end for some Q&A, and I want to just, if it's okay, chuck everybody into breakout rooms, and we'll just do that very briefly, just for 5 minutes. Probably put you into rooms of 3, because Gloria, for example, has put something interesting in the comments. You know, about I didn't actually realise I was a member. And I suspect a lot of Co-op members, you know, will think the same. And the whole tradition of mutuals, you know, especially with a lot of the building societies demutualising, you know, is sort of gone under the radar a little bit. So I think there's a lot to celebrate and shout about with the Co-ops. But anyway, I'm just going to pop you into breakout rooms very, very quickly. Give you a quick chance to introduce yourselves to each other, and then we will come back and have a quick Q&A. So let's just do that very quickly, and I'll see you back here shortly. Okay.
Could I just ask Ed a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to say, I think it's really great to be the best secret that other people don't know, but it's also even more important these days to let people know that there's a whole new economic perspective that benefits everyone. And I would like to, if you don't mind, suggest that you encourage people to help you shout about it. The nationwide campaign where they have customers doing poetry about mutualism, because mutualism and mutual aid is your heritage. You're bringing that to the whole economic and political scene without being party political. And I'm just requesting possibly that we could possibly work with you post-festival to see how we can promote that perspective as systemic kindness, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely. And I think that we've got, hey, nice to hear you.
Lucille, she's obviously got her ones.
Yeah, sorry about the background noise. You can also
it's
see
brilliant.
Hello.
troublemaker here. Trying to multitask today, doing my best.
Josh, you're absolutely right with that challenge, and it's something we need to really think through carefully. And I think we are looking to make sure that we can get the balance right in terms of how do we make sure we cut through and get impact and be able to be a society. A co-op is a society. It's not a PLC. I'm very keen on that, and it's a movement of members, and we need to make sure that we've got that national cut through. But also that we're delivering locally in the right way for that community, and that causes attention, and it causes issues around how we communicate. So the importance of how we use story and narrative to explain that is important, alongside that the idea of scale as well as significance. But then when we've got that level of members, how do we use them well to shout? Well, actually, traditionally, the Co-op have been a campaigning organisation. I'm talking, things like female rights to work, female rights to education. Actually, 1870s, I was talking about the fact that room was open and supportive of schools education. The fact that Fair Trade now, working with Cropper Cuckoo Co-op in the Ivory Coast with Divine Chocolate, and the money that community has chosen, I think it's about 70% women leadership in that community, but they've chosen to invest it in female education to grow that cooperative community. It's actually, we do a load of great stuff, but how do we talk about it? And we've got to get better at it. You're completely right.
I think really
sorry
is that kind of well run organizations and ethical organizations with a mutual philosophy will tend to be a bit humble and find it hard to shout about how great they're doing. So it's a really interesting problem. You should be shouting, but it's difficult to shout because of who you are.
It is, and also getting the narrative short, because if you're trying to do the right thing, sometimes the right thing is just bloody complex.
Yes, yeah. Cooperation is actually much more complex than meets the eye, isn't it? Takes a bit of thinking, makes your brain hurt. Gloria, and then Susan.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm just really pleased I was able to join on today. Kate and I actually met for a coffee, I can't remember how many months ago, and she was the one who said, I'm talking to my local co-op, can we get them, we'd like them to be involved. And I said, yeah, I want to know more, because she was telling me, she was saying, did you know? And I said, Kate, no, I don't. And I think we need to get this out there. So I'm really pleased you guys are here. Funnily enough, I also had explored a relationship with the Co-op Priesthorpe Academy. And there's a wonderful woman there doing an amazing job. And I went to meet her and talk to her about what she's doing. And I think hopefully they'll be putting together a video. But again, that philosophy in a school, I mean, that is like probably the nicest feeling high school I've ever been in. And my kids have gone through high school, so I've been to high schools. And I just thought, this is what in a high school should be like. She has a safe space, and she really looks after her kids, the ones who are, having a difficult day or a difficult situation. She brings them in, and I just wanted to shout out about them. So yes, I am now a super fan. I'm going to become my own member, not use my husband's card, because now I know what it means, and I didn't know that. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, and I think I'll ask Josh to close us out with some thoughts about kind of where the festival's going and what's happening in the immediate future. But I think, Gloria, that's really important. We've run loads of events and more to come this week. Some nobody's turned up, some one person's turned up, some we've had 100. This is the first time we're planting seeds, and as Gloria says, we're already making those sorts of connections, and I think this hopefully will grow and flourish, and we just really want to encourage mutual and cooperative and interconnected ness in Leeds as much as possible. So I just want my appreciation for joining in, and hopefully we can spread this recording far and wide and help you guys make a bit of a noise in a less than humble way, but in an appropriate way about what the Co-op does. Josh.
I would like to say a couple of more things about the events coming up, but I know that Susan had a point. Would you like to share that?
Sorry, I just want to make sure, because Lucilla posted a question, which I think probably Ed will take. It was just about how do you measure the social, environmental and local impact? So as a member pioneer, I feedback every month. I've got not an evaluation form. I give information about the activities I've been doing, the amount of people I've been engaging with. And obviously that goes to the Co-op kind of nationally. Do you want to say a bit more about how that's done quickly, Ed?
I can say loads, but my best recommendation is just Google the Co-op sustainability report, and what you will see in there is year on year recording. So we'll say where we've done better, we'll say where we've done worse, because it's about openness and accountability to our members.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you to all the Co-op and cooperative people who are on the call. Just like to say that we, after the festival week, well, first of all, on Saturday, we have the Kinder to the Environment Day, which of course is relevant to food and food production, and eating food as well. We also have the Catalysts event, Catalysts for a Kinder World. And one of the reasons why we felt that the Co-op was so important to involve was because actually one of the events that I'm involved with later in the Catalyst is called A Kinder Economy. I'm interviewing an author called Martin Whitlock, who shared with me that 70% of our current economy is unproductive. And that doesn't include the social and human value that the Co-op also is producing in its productivity. And it may be that I don't know how you measure that social impact, but one of the big issues, I think, in the framing of the economy at the moment is that kindness builds trust, it builds social value, it builds human value, and it builds environmental value. And creating a systemically kinder world is what our festival is trying to make a contribution to.